Our thinking occurs on two levels. One is the conscious, which is very small. You can take in about 40 data points. And the other is the subconscious, where you take in 11 million. How you will be most successful is to, when you start to hear what people say, you can also then frame, okay, what am I going to do about it? So that, given that that's your superpower and what makes you strong, and yes, it's typical for entrepreneurs, is you need to be able to see when it works and when it doesn't.
Welcome to Outsource to Profits. I have a fantastic guest. Gaby, do you mind please introduce yourself, your company, what you do, and how you serve the world?
Sure. So my name is Gaby Jordan, as you know. I'm the CEO and founder of Source Elements Group, and we are an executive coaching and consulting company. So I tell people I'm an executive life coach and a global educator, because I also run an education nonprofit. And those two things are very much aligned, because how we serve the world is really being able to give people skills to elevate themselves, their organizations, their teams.
Just recently, I have four business partners. Three are kind of active operators in the business. One's on an investor side, and this is in our agency, Get Levrg. And we were doing kind of 360 feedback amongst our own partners. And we did this session. I make fun of the episode in Seinfeld that was called The Airing of Grievances when they did Festivus, but we kind of did something similar so that we can all improve together. And some constructive feedback that was given about me and to me is I'm very much like a tornado that moves with high impact from place to place. And I've now been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and I believed in my heart and heart I had gotten so much better at allowing and empowering people to make to use critical thinking and to make autonomous decisions, and I would be there as a coach. But it still turns out that I can find my way of telling, not teaching, or disrupting plans, or kind of like overthrowing the government, so to speak, where my other partners are working in their divisions, and I would just come in and be like, here's what we're going to do here. So maybe we'll kind of kick that off. When you and I were talking offline, you mentioned the power of we and me, and I would like you to frame up for the founders who are just like me, which I think are so many of them. We are forces of nature.
Absolutely.
Your hurricanes means you go across the whole organization, you do this, or you're a tornado and you smashed a few buildings along the way. How do you first recognize that this is your superpower and your weakness all at the same time?
So good. So good. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that you did that work with your team, because that is huge. And often people don't do that. So one of the ways that you do it is we have a workshop which is called Building Champion Teams. And it really is about getting people to recognize their power, their superpower, what they're really great at, and then what is not so great about them. So the very same characteristics that can be great in one context, taken to an extreme or in a different context, can be problematic. And the whole key is to get to know yourself, right? Is to get to know, awareness is everything. So one of the things we talk about is the fact that our thinking occurs on two levels. One is the conscious, which is very small. You can take in about 40 data points. And the other is the subconscious, where you take in 11 million. So and then studies have shown that 80% of our thinking is negative to 20% positive. So if you imagine 80% of our thinking is negative on a subconscious level.
And you're just quelling that vampire.
Good luck to us. Good luck to us in terms of the results we want. Now, so how do you recognize it? One of the things is we say that really your thinking comes from two different sources. Your programming, which is your original programming, your DNA, so your emotional DNA, which, you can look at your parents or the people who raised you, right? So you got the good and the bad from that. And then also our beliefs, which we actually build in to support our personality traits. So one way is to look at, where you came from. The other way is to do what you did, which is interview people, because we can't see inside of our own head. And so when you interview people, you can find out, like, and you got to do it in a way that they know they're not in trouble. They get to tell the truth, right? And so when you start to hear what people say, you can also then frame, okay, what am I going to do about it? So that, given that that's your superpower and what makes you strong, and yes, it's typical for entrepreneurs, is you need to be able to see when it works and when it doesn't, and be open to that kind of feedback. You don't need to be. You can keep doing it the way that you've been doing it. However, what's really powerful is if people see that you, one, have an awareness, that you're committed to changing it, that you put in practices to actually change it, and that they have the ability to support you, which is let you know when it's happening so that you can do something about it. And it could be, a different result.
So, founders listening to this, many of them might be members of entrepreneur association or organization where they run forums. And in a forum, we use a process called Gestalt. And Gestalt means I can teach through story, but I can't tell you, the other founder, what to do. I would only tell you through my own experiences, what have you. Perhaps, if you don't mind getting tactical,
Sure.
if you were to double click into that interviewing process, is there a framework or a process that helps open up the founder's mind to A, become truthful, or B, express what they're really thinking, extracts the right questions? I'm just thinking of Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference, where you're using what and how based questions. Do you mind clicking in so that those listening could understand, how do I make that interviewing process really successful?
So one of the things you have to do is set up so that people feel safe, if you will. That is to say, they know that they're not in trouble. They know that this is intended to really improve the work that you're doing together.
Mhm.
And we actually also have a framework called building for championed conversations. And so if I use that framework, one thing is, why are you having the conversation? Why is it important for you to have the conversation? Second is, why are you concerned about having the conversation? The third is, where can you be accountable for how the situation has developed, right? How it currently is. And then asking questions, not from the perspective of being accusatory, but acknowledging whatever your truth is. And then hearing what the other person has to say, and then coming up with, what are you going to do about it in the future? So that's a framework that works both for resolving conflicts and for building something, like creating a team, creating a vision. And so you can use components of that to have that conversation about the interview. However, it might not need something as full blown as that. One, let somebody know that they're fully safe. Two, say, there are things about myself that I might not see. I wonder if you could shed some light on it. And I'm committed to developing things that I don't, committed to developing awareness that I don't currently have. And I'd appreciate your feedback. So,
Now, a lot of this was stemming from a macro conversation that you and I were having, in that culture is just the absolute most important thing.
that's
And
right.
old me, I can tell you that I've owned three agencies that have grown to six figures. Sorry,
Yeah.
to seven figures. And in that journey, my first two of them, I don't think I really understood it. Well, now in agency three in Get Levrg, we're 70 employees, going to 100, and then soon to be 150. And I believe it so wholeheartedly that it is one of the single reasons we are where we are today. And so, do you mind kind of double clicking into how this rolls up into a bigger, more pervasive importance around culture?
Absolutely. So we really do say that culture is the source of your results. And I like to say executive teams crush results when the team dynamic moves from we to me. And that has to do with your own accountability, you're recognizing where you're powerful, where you've made things happen, and then recognizing where you're a blocker. Okay. So when we work with teams, we start out by having people recognize their own power and where they've been and how successful they've been in some areas. And then we go look at, okay, where have you not been quite as successful? And doing this work in a team where people can see that there are things, one, that they may have seen that they didn't, that they weren't aware of, but two, the people are committed to actually doing something about it, develops a kind of intimacy that makes a huge difference in the productivity of a team. So starting from that perspective, then looking at, okay, what would I need to do if I wanted to change something? So we have a framework for what I call a 4-part success framework, where you have a particular goal in mind, you create promises, you have incentives, and you have someone to hold you accountable, using that particular framework to shift whatever you're trying to shift. Then looking at the relationship dynamic between people. Because if you come to, especially as you get in a larger organization, you as the founder, you as the president, you as the person in charge, you have a particular way that you interact. How you will be most successful is if you are operating on an equal level as a leader. Yes, you have supporters around you, but you want to elicit from them their own power in supporting this movement forward. And then once you do that, and then that's when we use the framework for how to have a conversation. Like, you're resolving things from the past, you're creating things for the future. But once you do that, you clear the air and then create an opportunity for people to actually create together and really get invested in what you're out for as a company. So I'll just tell you a quick story. We were in South Africa leading this program a year ago-ish. And there was an issue that this was for the executive team. There was an issue that had not been dealt with for months. Important issue. On the first day, on break 1, they resolved that issue because they had a different kind of connectedness. They had permission and they had the ability. And we weren't even planning to have them deal with that. That wasn't part of the agenda, except it was needed, and people just rose to the occasion and got something resolved. That's one. Another is we came into a company that was about to be sold. They were 25% behind their target. They had 4 months to make it, and it was a $2 billion company. We didn't work on their sales. We worked on the team and the culture. They hit their
A half
target.
$500 million behind is pretty hard to cover.
And so it's just amazing what is possible when you shift the focus and have people, they were people all over. They were siloed. They were in different parts of the world, right? And so they just weren't connected. So when they got connected and started to care about each other as human beings, magic started to show up,
Yeah.
really from unexpected places.
I run a global offshoring business, and I can tell you that it is a legacy bias that there can't be connectivity through the
Yes.
internet, uh, but you have to put in the time to n nurture and enable and actually care about the other
Yes.
person that you're working with.
Yeah.
Um, how do people learn more about you, connect with you, about your business, and how you help?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn for sure. So Gaby Jordan, Source Elements Group, or they can email me, Gaby at sourceelementsgroup.com. Easy peasy.
Well, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for being on Source to Profits.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.